Hi, my name is Gavin Joyce. I'm an engineer at Intercom. I'm going to talk to you about how we've scaled Ember at Intercom over the past 18 months and how it's enabled us to create much more ambitious products than we could before. If you're not familiar with Intercom, it's a tool which enables every team in your web business to personally communicate with your customers. Our mission is to make web business personal. We're doing that by replacing old siloed tools that businesses have traditionally used to communicate with the customers with one integrated platform. The company's 4 years old. We've been pretty successful so far. We'll be expanding from 140 to 280 people over the next 12 months. So if you're anyway interested in a new challenge, please get in touch at any point. We've a pretty large Ember application, 85k lines of JavaScript, 93 models, 200 controllers, which was really surprising to me when I saw that. I'm going to talk about some of the things that I think we've got right as we built out this product. I'll also talk about some of the things that I know we got wrong. It's going to be obvious at an Ember conference, but the first thing that we got right was choosing Ember. I joined Intercom in January last year. My first task was to work on the back end to create a clean abstraction around how we accessed user data. This is part of the Intercom application. It's a user list. It provides a live, filterable view of users in your web or a mobile app as they use it. The back end work was relatively simple, but it quickly became clear that updating the soup of Rails views and jQuery to use these new APIs would be quite challenging based on the old code was tightly coupled. It was also quite slow. So you can see here it takes about 5 seconds to render a page when I click on a segment here. There was just too much to do on the server each time. I'd worked with Ember before and I knew it could rebuild a much faster, much simpler, yet fully functional user list in Ember in less time than I could have refactored the existing Rails application. I built a very simple prototype over the course of a couple of evenings, and I used this to convince my colleagues that we should try this for real. So we kicked off a 3-week project with 3 engineers and a few guiding principles. Build a new, faster user list in Ember, fail fast if necessary, and plan for success if success seemed likely. We also wanted to answer the question, could engineers become productive quickly? I was the only person who knew Ember at that time. So here's what we built. It's far simpler in terms of code. It's like eight times less code. It's a much faster version. And we also had so much fun building this in that 3-week project. About 7 days into the project, it was very clear to everyone that our Ember user list was going to deliver everything that we'd promised. So this was a tweet from Dara Curran, our VP of engineering. In the second week of the experiment, Tomsters and Ember stickers started appearing everywhere in the office that week. And it was pretty clear that we were about to make a big bet on Ember. We looked at our Rails app and we considered what the next steps might be. All our product teams reevaluated their immediate plans as we worked out what each team's first steps into Ember would be. We invited Tom Dale over to visit us in Dublin for a couple of weeks, and happily he agreed, and he arrived in May. He posted this tweet on the first morning of his visit. Ember's conventions allowed him to immediately have productive conversations with our engineers. And this was an important time for us, and Tom really helped our product teams take good early trajectories with Ember. We sketched out a plan to migrate the other sections of the Rails app over to Ember and to bootstrap the teams one by one. In many cases, this meant just pausing or reevaluating our product plans. So after introducing Ember in March, we shipped our user list at the start of May to everyone. Tom visited us for 2 weeks in May, and just as our teams were beginning to ramp up, the product team responsible for the user list very quickly followed on replacing the company list in Ember. It reuses a lot of the same components. This was quite quick to do. We bootstrapped a second team then onto Ember in April, and they had a release about 10 weeks later with our new message composer. It was really exciting to see this team, how they reacted to Ember. It was basically there was universal excitement and enthusiasm for Ember. And it's still amazing to me how quickly we built polished features like this. The first product team continued their fast pace. They shipped a new company profile page. And then a third team released their first project with Ember, which is our, at the time, new shared inbox. This is the Rails version that they were replacing. And here's the Ember version that they built. It's vastly more ambitious. This would have been too complex to build with the number of engineers that we had at the time if we hadn't moved to Ember. And we simply just wouldn't have attempted it. So we then migrated our message list. And we then introduced new conversation cards throughout the application. And again, we used components that we'd already built in the inbox to elsewhere in the application, and this made, again, this task quite simple. The incremental features kept coming. Our Rails app kept getting smaller. Permissions allow admins to lock down access to data and services within the Intercom app. Visibility allows you to customize which data is displayed by default. We then added real-time messaging, which was a big project across Intercom. Every component was touched by it. It allows you to have live chats with your customers within our product. But again, this was a pretty simple project within the Ember application, just basically based on how well everything was factored. And this brought our inbox to life. When it's busy, you can see conversations coming in and out and multiple people having chats with customers, which is great. We then added emoji and stickers to the inbox. I'm going to fly through these now. Our new auto message composer, again, we reused many existing components, some from the user list, some from the inbox, some from the existing composer. HTML editor, better user profiles, and it just we just have a great momentum, and it's continuing to this day. Message goals. We added team inboxes to the inbox. Quickly followed up with, followed by inbox rules, and this is a pattern that we're introducing throughout the application, where you can do very basic workflows with it, if this then that pattern. And bring us up to where we are today. We released folders a week ago or a month ago, and then visitor auto messaging, and you can see here that we're reusing these components again. It's just proved to be extremely valuable. So we started this project, or this timeline, with one person knowing Ember, myself, and we now have, out of the 50 engineers that we have, 18 regularly contribute to the Ember application, and 47 people have some level of contribution. And I love looking at this. It just shows how our product teams have built up and continue to drive such great momentum with Ember since we introduced it. There's a poster in our office with these words on it: make it smaller, do it simpler, makes us faster. And I really like it because it reminds me of this song from Daft Punk. The reason that it is there is to remind us of one of our company core values, which is think big but start small. We take on big, ambitious projects, but we tackle them as a series of small steps. Continuous integration is one of those steps that enables us. It's one of the things that enables us to take these small steps, and it's something that we've always had in Intercom right from the beginning. So here's the last 4 years showing the number of times that we ship Intercom to production. We've gone from deploying it early on about 10 times a day to about 80 at the moment. And we began continuously deploying our Ember application right at the beginning of our project as well. Around the same time, we introduced a feature flag system. So this kind of echoes Chrome and the Ember project itself, but it allows us to ship features for our own use early and then to some customers as part of a beta program before rolling it out to everyone. And the combination of continuous deployment and these feature flags allows us to build much better products because we learn and improve as the thing is being built. So here's an example of a feature that's currently in beta. Not many people have seen it. It's video replies. Hold down a space bar, record a message, let go, and it gets sent to the customer. We may or may not release this to people. We're still experimenting with it. Something we didn't get right, and we as Intercom, it's not Ember's fault, was the performance of our app over time. Speed was one of the reasons that we initially moved to Ember, and it made it attractive. And the initial application we built was very speedy. But earlier this year, we started to notice that in parts of the application, it had become sluggish. We've always had good server-side instrumentation, but we didn't have good instrumentation on the client, so we didn't have good data to analyze. Our shared inbox is one of the areas that's was most acutely affected, so we began by looking at that. The first thing we did was create a very simple bookmarklet which captured component rendering times and outputs them to the console. So you can see the output in the console as I switch conversation here. It lists every component rendered along with how long it takes to render them. And this simple mechanism allowed us to quickly figure out which components were taking a long time and which components we were rendering a lot of. So it turns out that the most frequently used component in our inbox is a tooltip opener. You can see that tooltips are present on almost everything that I hover over here. Sometimes it's just simple text, sometimes it's a whole component that's displayed. But rendering a handful of components is normally quite fast, but if you've a large number, the total time can add up quite quickly. So here's what our tooltip opener component looked like before we made it faster. In this example, we're just displaying some text, record a video on a hover. All this component does is set up some event handlers for mouse over and then yield the inner content. And a completely different component is responsible for displaying the actual tooltip content and zipping into the right place. But there's only one of those for the page, so the render time wasn't problematic. Importantly, this isn't rendering anything visible. And if we could remove these opener components, we knew we'd get a significant speed boost. So we decided in this case to replace the opener component with a global mouse over handler for anything which has the tooltip opener class. As you can see, the outer span has it there. This low-level event handler grabs the data attributes from the element and sends an action somehow to the component responsible for displaying the tooltip. This clearly isn't the Ember way, but we're frugal and we've been frugal with this sort of approach and pragmatic where necessary. So this is one case that made it quite faster. We've also been careful to encapsulate as much as possible in an add-on. So it's quite possible the future versions of Ember will remove the need for us to use an escape valve here. And if that's the case, we'll be in a good position to switch back. We've also a large number of anchors in our inbox, and for similar reasons, we created a lightweight alternative to the link2 helper called href2. It provides the same interface as link2, and it does much less because it just renders a URL. It doesn't care about bindings and things like that. Class names. Here's two examples. The top one is the built-in link2 helper, and the one below is our href2 example. The top row of links here are using the built-in helper, and you can see they become green as you select them, and the bottom row uses the index2. You can see that they're triggering route transitions. The URL is correct, but they don't themselves have any class indicator. And I recently created an RFC to add this helper to Ember itself, and I'm hoping to begin working on this soon. This is the net result of the changes in our app, which are pretty significant. This graph is displaying render timing for 4 key components in the inbox that make up conversations. We managed to more than half the render time for these, which has made the inbox a lot snappier, especially for long threads. We have a few Ember services which we use to track, batch and then publish the client-side performance metrics, and we'll open source these soon. Our Heartbeat service captures metrics such as memory usage every 30 minutes. It counts the number of event handlers in the DOM and things like that. And these allow us to monitor and detect any memory leaks. We also have a simple timing device which allows us to instrument and batch report key code paths in our application. It's all built on top of the Ember instrumentation APIs, but we'll open source that as well. Something else that I know we got wrong is we weren't running the Ember betas as they were released, and we had been pretty good at upgrading as release versions of Ember come out, but because we hadn't been running the betas, we hadn't created the opportunity to detect and report any issues that we see as a large Ember application. When upgrading Ember to 1.3, we noticed that there had been a regression in the initial render time of components, and as a very large performance sensitive application, that kind of bit us a bit. If we had been running the 1.13 betas, we would have been able to flag this much earlier. I think our reaction to this has been better. We spent some time improving the tooling that helps Ember contributors benchmark their changes. In this case, this is the Ember performance tool from Evil Trout. We have the app running in Ember 2.1. We can change a query string and boost the app in production. And we have been backporting the required depreciation changes. So we're in a good place to upgrade to Ember 2.1 or 2.2 very soon. Even worse, something similar happened with Ember CLI, where we had been slow to update versions as they were released. Version 0.1.2 was released over a year ago, so we're way behind. The main blocker for us has been incremental build times. More recent versions of Ember CLI have, for us, rebuild times in about 25 seconds. My colleague Pat has been working on the Ember CLI master builds and has begun contributing to Ember CLI into the Stress app repository, which has been used to represent pathological cases of slowness in Ember CLI. Thanks to Stefan Penner and others' tireless work making key broccoli packages faster, it looks like Intercom's build times using Ember CLI master as of this morning are now under 5 seconds. So we'll be upgrading very soon. This tweet was from last night, so this is great news for us. The clear lesson for me here is that we need to get much better at running early versions of Ember and Ember CLI. In some other ways, we have been getting better recently. We've open sourced a handful of add-ons. We've begun creating some deep dive screencasts with Ember contributors where they can share their knowledge on Ember internals and make hopefully contributing more accessible for people who haven't done so far, and also selfishly our team in Intercom. We released 2 of these with Yehuda last month. The first is a lap around Ember source code. The second is a deep dive on HTML bars. And it's a look at some of the work that's currently going on to make Ember rendering even faster. So if you're interested in the internals, I definitely recommend checking them out. Robert Jackson was also kind enough to come to our tiny Airbnb kitchen yesterday and record one on Ember views. Thanks, Robert. We're also creating a role within Intercom for someone to go deep on Ember and take ownership of some things like the performance of our app, and they'll have room to focus on extracting and open sourcing as much code as possible. So in summary, the introduction of Ember to Intercom 18 months ago has been really transformative. As we double our company over the next 12 months, Ember's conventions and power is going to continue to allow us ship really highly polished features and have lots of fun while doing it. So I'm very excited about that. Thanks very much.